Welcome to I'll Marry You, a podcast with me, Olivia Coleman, full of tips and tricks from the UK wedding scene, interviews with industry experts, and a whole lot of oversharing. Yeah! Welcome to the I'll Marry You podcast in 2026. How was your Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever you celebrated? I hope you had a wonderful break. I did have a wonderful break. But, it's just a lot, isn't it? It's just a lot. I'm just going to turn the telly off because I'm distracted. Lisa Snowdon's doing a segment about fashion. I don't quite know where she finds her inspiration from. It's all very cheap. Also, is Lisa Snowdon a fashionista? Because really, is she not famous for going out with George Clooney for a long time? Was that her? I watch a lot of daytime TV if you're new here. And actually, I was just thinking what really annoys me is targeted ads, because even when I'm working, obviously, I use that term, I work from home and I have the telly on in the background. And if I have This Morning on, you get targeted ads on terrestrial, obviously. And I know it's daytime TV and it's the middle of the week, but, not only old people watch daytime TV in the middle of the week, because just in one ad, I've got a terrible travel company that's advertising cruises and then the funeral people. So they obviously think that the only people that watch daytime TV these days are old, dying people. It's not. It's me too. I digress. Welcome. Yes, I had a wonderful Christmas. Thank you for asking. It's a lot though, isn't it? The lurgy that everyone had. We all got the cold and the flu. It turned into gastro, if I'm totally honest. It was quite aggressive. The thing about my husband, and maybe you can relate to this, he's a big old hombre. He's a big old boy. So a lot of things he does are bigger than they should be. But when he's sick, I'm sorry, this is TMI, but if you're listening to the podcast and you're new, this is what you can expect. And if you're a long-standing listener, then you know what's coming. Anyway, so when he vomits, because there's so much of him, it's so aggressive. It's not like it's just so aggressive. And for some reason, he didn't have the brain power to go downstairs to the bathroom to be sick. He chose to do it repeatedly from the bed into a bucket. And because I'm a millennial, I use the same bucket in my house for sort of washing the dishes, hand washing the clothes, and indeed vomiting into, because that's what we did in the 90s. So he had the gastro, which I was awake all night for. And then, to support him, to rub him on the back and say, oh, sweetheart, but also, don't shit in my bed, which he did. And then 3 days later, I had the gastro. And do you know what? Looking back, it was probably one of the worst nights of my life. Penelope, who is now 1, we'll get on to that, she was teething and she was up all night and she would only settle on the old boob. Who can blame her? So I was literally sitting on the sofa because I had the decency to be sick downstairs with her on tit. And then I'd be like, no, I got to go. And then I'd run off and then she'd wake up because I clutched her from the bosom of her mother. I would go and do what I needed to do in the bathroom, come back and she'd be crying. So I'd have to do it all over again. I think I got up an hour's sleep. It was hell on earth. And that was about 3 weeks before Christmas. And then we all had the coughs and the colds and the kids. And, when you've got kids and they're at school, what is it? If any of your teachers, praise be, you're very good at what you do. And I applaud you. Thank you for shaping the young minds of the future world. Just teach, man. Do you know what I mean? Like 2 weeks before Christmas, we don't need Odd Sock Monday, Christmas Jumper Tuesday, limp into school on one leg Wednesday, bling your bike Thursday. We don't need it. It's too much for us to think about. I'm overstimulated. I can't keep track. I actually managed to keep track of every different event for my 5-year-old, nearly 6-year-old. And it was just a lot. And then on top of that, you've got to buy all the presents because I can't leave my husband to do it. Although he did that fun thing, as we're literally approaching his family's house, moments to spare, after Christmas, the 28th or whatever, he's like, what have we got, everyone? So I told him. And then he's like, it's not enough. Is it not enough? Should we run into Sainsbury's and grab a Toblerone? Why are you telling me that 5 minutes before we get there? So it was a lovely Christmas. We did what we always do. And we leave our house and we spend the entire fortnight with family, which as I grow older, I regret. Because it's just too long to be out of routine and away from home, and it's too long to be with family. And I can say that because none of my family listen to this podcast. They are ever so supportive of me. Christmas Day was the first time that my brother and his wife hosted, and it was wonderful. But he got the timings, again, No one listens so I can bitch about them. It's great. You're like a free therapist. A free therapist. He got the timings wrong for the turkey, didn't he? And then he got too pissed. So we ended up eating 3 hours late. So that meant that we didn't get to eat later on, when you have your picky bits. And that's the best part of Christmas Day for me. You have your lunch, 1, 2, even I push it to 3 o'clock, but then sort of 8, 9, 10, that's when you have your cold turkey sandwiches and your cold pigs in blankets and your cheese board and your puddings and you're a bit tipsy on red wine. Do you know what I mean? We couldn't do any of that because we didn't eat till 5:30. We left at 7, went back to mum and dad's. Me and JC, that's my husband, we stayed up till midnight watching The Bodyguard, which, if you know, personal little tidbit for you here, Bodyguard, I think, was my first sort of sexual awakening when it first came out. Probably not when it first came out, because I don't know when it first came out, but I was probably a child. But it was the first film that I was like, oh, get me a little bit of Kevin Costner. And of course, I've watched Yellowstone since, and I still very much would. And then it was just sort of celebrations, libations, kids, family, noise. The baby wasn't sleeping. I was averaging 3 hours a night sleep, so I was a little aggy. I'm glad it's over. I'm glad Christmas is over and we're back into it. It's a new year. It's a new me. I put on half a stone over Christmas, but I imagine half of that's Bailey's and the other half of it is just sort of the emotional baggage weighing down on me, from being with family for so long. And so we're now the second week back into it or whatever. The kids have gone back to school, childcare. I've got time to myself. I've gone to the gym 3 times this week. I realise this is coming out on Tuesday. So last week I went to the gym 3 times. I've lived to tell the tale. I've decided, me and my husband, right, New Year's resolution. He is partial to a little chocky and I am partial to all alcohol. And so I said to him, right, this January, not even this year, this January, and this is a big thing for us, this January, Monday to Friday, no chocolate and no alcohol. Now, I think that's good. Because if I said dry January, it wouldn't be realistic. I wouldn't be able to last that long. I don't think I've ever gone a month without a drink, and I've been pregnant twice. Do you know what I mean? And so we said Monday to Friday, no booze and no chocky. And he didn't even make it to Monday. The first Monday had a flapjack. Second Monday had Cocoa Pops, which he thinks doesn't count, but I certainly think it does. And then he just thought, sod it, and just ate a whole chocolate bar on the third day. I, however, went 4 days without alcohol, and I'm actually really proud of myself. And I just went to the gym now and I said to my PT, I have done 4 days without alcohol. And she was like, yeah. I was like, I know. How good is that? She's like, it's 4 days. I was like, I know, 4 days. But no, that's like not long. And I've decided that I don't need that kind of negativity in my life. I need people who lift me up, who support me, who understand that even getting through 4 days without a drink is impressive and admirable. I'm not, well, maybe on paper I'm an alcoholic, but I don't believe that I have a problem because I don't get drunk every day. Generally as a rule, I don't drink on Mondays unless it's a bank holiday. I drink every other night of the week, but I only have one. Do I need it? Yes, I do. But I also think that I work from home and it's kind of like my end of the day, kids finished work, kids have gone to bed, mummy signed off kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? I've spent nearly 10 minutes talking absolute dribble. I do apologise, but actually this is a good segue because on today's episode, as it is January 2026, I've decided to do something that I've never done before, and I'm actually feeling quite uncomfortable about it. It's not AIM. It's I've decided I'm going to talk about myself. I'm going to talk about myself because January, February, I've said this a million times, January and February is the busiest time for bookings for wedding suppliers. Apparently 40% of bookings happen in January and February because every Tom, Dick and Harriet get engaged over Christmas, or if they get engaged at any time after mid-September, the whole thing is, oh, we'll wait till the new year. And so it is a huge influx of inquiries and admin and all the rest of it. And so some people might be new here. They might be discovering the podcast for the first time. And so I thought what I would do is I've done the whole, do you know what, I might do it again, but I have done the whole what to do when you first get engaged episode. I've done that every year since I've been doing the podcast. And I might do it next week, let's be honest, because my thoughts change by the minute, especially by the year. But so I've done that episode and I thought, okay, what do people want to hear about? And they want to hear about me. So I'm going to tell you all about me. And it's, believe it or not, I genuinely find it quite uncomfortable to talk about myself. I love talking about work. Like I literally will, I'm that really annoying person that will speak aloud on the phone in a public place. And it's obvious that I want you to ask me what I'm talking about or what I do for a living. Like I want to talk about it constantly because I'm obsessed with it. But actually talking about myself, I find viscerally uncomfortable. So here goes. So my name's Liv. My friends call me Liv. But I know it's call me bitch. I already feel uncomfortable. I already hate it. Okay, no, don't be so stupid, Olivia. Olivia Coleman. I am a wedding celebrant and podcast host. I currently live just outside Bath, UK. I say that. I live in a town called Trowbridge. That is rough. To the point where people call it Trovegas. I call it the armpit of Wiltshire. The town itself isn't so bad, and I live on a very desirable street. That's what Rightmove calls it. But it's just, it's when you have a town that's up and coming, but the people who lived there when it was not up and coming still reside. So it's actually not the town itself that's so bad, although we do have a lot of sort of £1 shops in the shopping precinct. But anywhere with a precinct says it all, really, doesn't it? But it's a lovely house, lovely area, and we've lived here for 8 years. But I am not from here, so oh god, I'm really getting into it, aren't I? I was born on a dark day in February. I am 21. Fine, I'm 31. Fine, twist my arm, Margaret. I'm 37. I'm 37. I'm 38 next month. I am knocking on the door of 40, and if I think about it, it upsets me. But if I don't think about it, I'm excited about it because I genuinely believe that the 40s are going to be my decade. Genuinely, honest, hand on heart, believe that's when fame is going to finally find me, and I'm going to finally find fame. I also plan on looking really good and getting a lot of work done. So I'm 37, just. I was born in Herefordshire. I grew up in a gorgeous house that is still home to mum and dad with 2 brothers in Herefordshire, Gloucestershire on a farm, very close to a lot of Fred West's killings. It's like a local celebrity where we live. There's not much else to do. I went to boarding school. Don't judge me. I judge me. There's a lot of boarding school stories I could tell you, but they're probably not very appropriate. Although if you are new here, this is a very inappropriate podcast. And we're all frankly surprised that I've not yet been cancelled. Maybe I have, and I just don't know about it. Went to boarding school, very dramatic, shocker. Got the drama scholarship, didn't I? Auditioned, been a while, auditioned for that using a monologue. I'm really going into detail. Using a monologue from Alice to the Looking Glass. Anywho, did that. Loved school, hated school, got bullied, known as the fat funny one. What are you going to do? You can't have it all, can you? And I remember my dad used to say to me, but darling, you're so funny. And I literally remember to this day looking back at him and going, Dad, no one wants to shag funny. He didn't enjoy that, but it's true, isn't it? No one wants to shag funny. Although as I get older, I think maybe people do want to shag funny. I want to shag funny. Funny, not fanny. Although both work. Left school, went on a gap year, didn't I? Went on 2 gap years, actually, because I'm a cliche. The first one was about pissing about working to earn some money. And my first ever job was in a delicatessen called Pepper and Oz. Also, note to self, I just spilled my coffee. I speak as I think, so there's no plan to this. Someone said to me today, what's your podcast recording? What's it going to be about? I was like, I don't know, till I get there and hit record. First job was in a deli called Pepper and Oz, and there was a coffee machine. I didn't know how to use it. I just basically, whatever coffee they wanted was either black or white. Penelope Keith once taught me how to make a latte. And we had a truffle counter, and I used to clean the truffle counter, and every time I cleaned it, I would pinch at least 2 truffles and put them in my apron, and then I would go into the toilets and just eat them, because that's the kind of wild cat I am. 2 gap years. First one was working, second one was traveling. Sometimes I say things and I do realise how they sound, but it's the truth. I can't help it. I also sing. I sing first word that come into my mouth, and I suggest you try it because it's actually really fun. For example, I'll just be sat in the room and go, when the vicar said to the owl, hello. Just came out. My PT today suggested I get tested for ADHD. She's probably right. Did the gap years, and then I went to university, and I went to Bath Polytechnic, I think. I don't know. But actually, it was I wanted to do performing arts. I wanted to do acting, and it was the only place at the time that I could find that did a drama school accredited course that wasn't in a drama school. I mean, don't get me wrong, I auditioned for drama schools. I auditioned for big ones like Lipper and RADA and Lambda, and I did not get in. But I did get into Bath Spa. But I didn't, and I wanted to do acting, but I didn't want to be surrounded by actors because I think they're a bit twatty. Do you know what I mean? Even though I am one. Like we'd be on the bus and someone would suddenly start singing. Again, I realised I just said that I do that. I contradict myself a lot, but it would be very sort of lovey, you know. And so I spent 3 years studying acting. And when I say acting, it wasn't just acting, it was stage combat. It was singing, it was dancing, it was Shakespeare, it was writing, it was a lot. And the method that we learnt from the Stanislavski method is it uses your real emotions and it like tears you down. So for example, we would have this thing every week. What was it called? Producer Drew will know because that's where I met producer Drew at university. We lived together. And you did this thing once a week where you would be given a monologue, and it wasn't just like Alice Through the Looking Glass, it was like Greek tragedy and if you've ever read or studied Greek tragedy, it's literally like the mum slept with the son who killed the uncle who ate the heart of the bear. Like it's Greek tragedy. And once a week we would have to take a monologue from whichever Greek tragedy we're studying, and then we would have to learn it and we'd have to perform it. But in order to perform it, we would have to show our preparation, which would have to be to take a real life memory / trauma and use that emotion to bring up the emotion of the Greek tragedy. So we had to find an emotion that actually happened to us in our real life and that was on a level of the mum sleeping with the son, killing the uncle, eating the heart of the bear. And so you could imagine like 30 sort of 20-year-olds, 19, 20-year-olds in a room all crying because it was a real genuine emotion. I actually twisted my ankle. I tore my Achilles tendon in Freshers Week, and we'd have to perform it. But in order to perform it, we would have to show our preparation, which would have to be to take a real life memory / trauma and use that emotion to bring up the emotion of the Greek tragedy. So we had to find an emotion that actually happened to us in our real life and that was on a level of the mum sleeping with the son, killing the uncle, eating the heart of the bear. And so you could imagine like 30 sort of 20-year-olds, 19, 20-year-olds in a room all crying because it was a real genuine emotion. I actually twisted my ankle. I tore my Achilles tendon in Freshers Week. I was sober when it happened, trust me. And so I couldn't stand for the first like 6 weeks of university. It's a wonder I made friends because I just used to sit there and everyone else would be walking around and I just used to have to sit down and we'd have to do an action, right? So if you were going to get angry, you'd get your hands and you'd like push them down. The teacher would be like, right, find an action. So it's like a punch or a hug or a squeeze or something to like help you get into that emotion. And everyone would be walking around like kicking or punching or hugging or laughing or doing some sort of funny walk. And I couldn't stand and walk for the first 6 weeks unless I was on crutches. So I used to have to sit there. So I would sit there in a chair and I would just be bashing my hands. What God's green earth I looked like. Anyway, like I said, wonder I made friends, but I did. And I had the most wonderful 3 years of my life, if I'm honest. The first Christmas term I met James Coleman, didn't I? I met James Coleman and I met him in the shining lights of Wetherspoons Bath, the first and last time I've ever frequented a Wetherspoons because they are a shithole. And I saw him and I genuinely, to this day, this is nearly 19 years ago. Well, just over 18 years ago. I saw him and I said to my friends, that is the fittest guy I have ever seen. He was so fit, like, you know, and my love life up until this point was it wasn't good. Again, I was the fat funny one. I was always the fat funny one. I don't think I was even that fat, you know, it's not kind really. There was a girl at school called Sally and she once asked me to borrow my clothes because she felt like she wanted to wear something baggy. Girls can be so bitchy. And then actually the same one, she used to call me Kit Kat because when Kit Kat Chunky came out, she was really mean to me. So I met him and I said to my friends, he's the fittest guy I've ever seen in my life. And he came over to us and started shouting at my friend. But obviously I was like the perpetual wing woman. I was the one that they would talk to get to the fit one. But she had a boyfriend, so he passed on her and he went for me. And I followed him to the nightclub the discotheque, and we spent all night snogging, didn't we? Snogging next to the speaker in the corner. And at the end of the night, he said, come home with me, because he's an absolute slut. And I said, no, because I'm a lady. Actually, I was just terrified because I was 20 and I hadn't been with a lot of men, if I'm honest. And I was just like, ah, scary. So I said no. So I walked the wrong way home just to avoid walking on his route. It took me 2 hours to get home. It should take me 20 minutes. And then the next day, we're really getting into it. Apparently, I am good at talking about myself. And then the next day, I was in town again. I'd been to see a play with some friends, and I was outside a kebab shop eating cheesy chips and chicken nuggets because I'm an absolute lad. Funny and fat and funny. Like, you're a bit happy. And he rang me because I gave him my number. And he rang me and he said, did I just pass you outside the kebab shop? And I was like, oh, it doesn't sound like me. Yeah, you did. Yeah. He was like, oh, well, do you want to lift home? Because I was working in town, going home. I was like, oh my God, okay, great. I remember being like shoving my cheesy chips to my friend and being like, gum, I need gum. Oh my God, he's going to come back. And he picked me and two of my housemates up and drove us home. And it was Christmas time. And we got in the car and Michael Bublé came on the radio. And I was obsessed with Michael Bublé when I was younger. Still kind of am. And he said, oh my God, I really like this guy. And actually, in hindsight, my first thought should have been, he's a homosexual. But it wasn't. It was like, oh my God, we're soulmates. We're absolute soulmates. And we snogged. And again, I would not let him come into my house or my vagina. And then I went home the next day for Christmas break, and we spent the entire time chatting on the phone, and like for hours a day. And you know, when you're young and he wasn't my first love. We'll get on to that another time. But you know, when you meet someone and you are just like, God, I miss it. I wonder if my next husband will feel this way. But you know, when you meet someone, you're so like besotted and excited and you keep checking your phone to see if they've messaged. And when you do, your heart literally like, oh my God. And it was like that. And we spent the whole Christmas break chatting. And then we basically just started dating, I suppose, although we weren't really dating because we were both poor uni students. And that was it. That was first year of uni 18 years ago. And we're still together. We're married. We've been married for 8 and a bit years. Yeah, 8 and a bit years. And we have 2 gorgeous children. Lola is 5.5 and Penelope just turned 1 this year before Christmas. We've been together a long time. He was a baby when I met him, although he lied about that. A fun little personal tidbit for you. When I met him that night in the nightclub, do we just call them clubs? What do people call them nowadays? Do people go to clubs? I met him and I was 20 at the time, nearly 21. And he told me that I was 20. He told me that he was 19, nearly 20. He spoke fluent Cypriot and he played rugby for Gloucester. Well, all 3 things are like catnip to me. I was like, oh my God, loved a rugby player. He was so big and buff. Oh God, he used to wear very tight t-shirts. Terrible thing with his hair. His muscles were extraordinary. And so he told me that. And then it was after we got back from Christmas break and I was at a house party with some other students and I was chit-chatting about this guy that I'd met and that I was chatting to and that I was kind of seeing. And a girl there, a friend of a friend, was like, oh, is that James Coleman? I said, yeah. Do you know him? She was like, yeah, I went to school with him. I was like, oh, how funny. She was like, yeah, he's not 19. I was like, what? No, I think he's 20 now. She was like, no. He's just turned 18. I'm sorry. What? The truth is, and she told me this because she knew him, her name was Tory. Amazing what you can remember when you start talking nonsense. He just turned 18. He did not speak fluent Cypriot. What he actually said to me that night in the club was, he's going to have a taxi. And I was drunk and so in love with him that I didn't even care. I was like, oh, that's amazing. You're so cultural. And he played rugby for Bath Academy, not Gloucester, which I had worked out because I Googled him thoroughly. We had Google back then. And so I rang, I remember that night ringing him, like, oh my God, you lied to me. Nah. And he was like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Where are you? I'll come and find you. I was like, you can't, not telling where I am. There are only like 3 nightclubs in the town, so he found me eventually. And I remember he walked in and I looked at him and I was mortified. I was devastated. My heart was broken. And he looked at me to like approach me to be like, this is not true. These rumors are false. And the girl that told me turned around and his face just dropped. And he was like, oh shit. So he lied to me, but I didn't care because he was so fit. I was together ever since. We've been together ever since. I'll tell you all about my own wedding another time. But let's get on to it. So that's me. That's me in a nutshell. Now, we're together, kids, family, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of things little bits can I tell you about me? Lived in Barcelona for a year, taught English and drama. We were still together. We used to see each other sort of every few weeks. Was on Come Dine With Me. That is on YouTube. You can find it. I do not like people who keep up with the Joneses. That's fine because I am a Jones. I say a lot of shit that I don't mean. I used to be very dramatic, but I like to think I've grown out of it. I really struggle with coleslaw. Love an Asian slaw. I think it's the mayonnaise for me. Love a mulla corner, sherry flavoured, bellissimo. Watch a lot of telly and a lot of shit telly. Case in point, as I was talking about this morning, yes, Kat Deely is the world's worst presenter. My best friend's my mum or my daughter Lola. Although I've got a lot of friends that I really love, actually. Although I tend to ignore them when wedding season comes around. If they did listen, because none of my friends or family are very supportive of my podcast, and I apologise to you. Every year I apologise to you. So after I left uni, I lived in Barcelona for a year. And then after that, I came back and I got a job in a interiors shop, homeware and interiors shop in the middle of Bath. James and I were living together in this little flat in a town called Bradford-on-Avon, which is genuinely just outside of Bath. And it was probably one of the best parts of my life. It was 3 years of like, I love my job, I love my boss, I love my friends. We had no responsibility. We lived in this gorgeous town where we could just pop out to this gorgeous pub, go for walks. It was in hindsight, we both have said that it was one of the best times of our life. And then a friend of mine, a best friend of mine, got me an interview at a wedding venue. So this is probably about 10 years ago now. And I went for this interview, and the venue at the time, I'm not going to say the name of the venue for various reasons, but the venue at the time was owned by a couple, probably in their early 60s, a farming couple. The venue itself was on a farm. It was an old converted tithe barn, and it'd been in the farm for years. It'd been in the family, sorry, for years and years and years. And they were a really lovely couple, really lovely. I've got a lot of fondness for them. And when I went to the interview, they were like, "So what do you do now?" I was like, "I work in a homeware shop." Basically, all my working life had just done retail, which I love anyway. And they were like, "Right, okay, so you've done no hospitality." I was like, "No, never. Got a phobia of trays. Never worked in hospitality. Ever worked in events? No. Weddings? No. Love weddings. Never worked in them." Right, okay. And they were like, "And you've got a degree in," I was like, "performing arts." And I remember him saying to me, "What does that mean? And how does that actually equip you to do this job?" I really wanted this job. And I was like, "Well, it means that I can act confidently in anything." And I bullshitted my way into it, basically. I was like, "I'm a really good public speaker. I love people. I'm a chameleon. I'm a chameleon, Peter. I can do whatever you want." And I got the job. And it was for maternity cover. And then I stayed on afterwards. And I absolutely loved it. So it was a very popular wedding venue. We were very busy. We did over 200 weddings a year. And my job was pretty much everything behind the scenes. So I didn't run the events, I didn't do the weddings themselves, but I did everything leading up to it. From the first phone call, all the admin, all the inquiries, all the social media, all the emails, all the constant correspondence up until about a month before, when they would come in for their planning meeting, they would meet their event manager, and then the event manager would take over. But the longer I was there, the more invested I became with each couple. So quite often I'd be there on the day anyway, because I was doing visits in the morning, and I would just hang around. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved the weddings. I loved the place. It was a beautiful venue in the countryside. So it was a gorgeous place to be every day. Loved the team. We all just were like a little family, which I've learned that in hospitality and events, and especially wedding venues, it's constant and you're working crazy hours, and you have to, in any job, you have to love the people that you work with if you work full time, because you spend more time with those people than you do with your own family, right? So that's key. And I loved the team so much. And over time, I took on more and more responsibility and I got more invested. And the thing about events, and I don't know if you're a supplier listening to this, or actually, do you know what? If you're an engaged couple, you'll probably notice if your engagement is a long time, it's not unheard of to have a high staff turnaround at a wedding venue, because like I say, it is so intense. It is such hard work. It is such long hours, and often it's young people, quite often young women, who think, "Oh, I want to be a wedding planner," and then they do it and they realize it's not glamorous and it's bloody hard work. And so there's a high turnaround. Not many people do it for very long in terms of years, not months. And so people started to leave, and they were my friends, and it changed. Sort of day-to-day things changed. And there's one thing they always used to say to me is, what, you really give a shit, don't you? And I was like, yes, I give a shit. This is like, what? I just loved my job so much. I love my couples. I was so invested in everyone's wedding. And I was so adamant from day one to this day right now that you should treat, even if you have 200 weddings that year, you should treat that wedding like it is the only wedding that day, that week, that month, that year that has ever happened. It is so important. And my colleagues lost interest. They couldn't give two shits by the end of it. It was just another work day for them, which is fine. That's fair enough. So they would eventually leave, but I didn't leave because I just loved it. And I never lost that love for it. And then I got up the duff, didn't I? An old preganargonant. Preganoodle. The man did his thing and it worked. And so I left to go on maternity leave. I left to go on maternity leave in January 2021. No, 2020. January 2020, I left to go on maternity leave. Do you remember what else happened back then? COVID. I left my job in hospitality. I gave birth March 17th, 2020. And lockdown, the first ever lockdown, happened 5 days later, or 5 days later. So in a way I was lucky because there were no restrictions when I went into the hospital. I remember they just started to be like, you can't really come and go as much as you would do normally because of this thing. James smoked cigarettes at the time and he was like, that really doesn't work for me. So he kept telling the midwives that he'd left his inhaler, because he's also asthmatic. He's very healthy. He kept telling them he'd left his inhaler in the car, or he had, like, I don't know, a problem or whatever. He just kept having to nip out. So the actual birth itself was fine, normal by all accounts. Then we get home, and old Chris Whitty, remember him? Oh my God, I love Chris Whitty. He put us all into lockdown. So we went into lockdown. And you've got all these hormones, first baby, all this stuff, your whole life's changed, and then the whole world changes. And we're talking days after giving birth. And we had a decision to make. We were living where we're living now, and it's a 3-bed house, terrace street, middle of a town. And I wanted to be with my mum. And my mum and dad live where I grew up. They live on a farm. So they said, right, come, pack your bags. It was like the end scene in Sound of Music, when everyone packs their bags and they escape over the mountains. So we did. We packed our lives up and we went to the farm, which sounds like rehab, and it kind of was. Within a couple of weeks, my brother, his wife, and their 2 babies back then moved in as well. We were like a commune. So the world changed, and I had a newborn baby, and I was living with my nephews and my sister-in-law, who luckily happens to be my best friend. She doesn't listen to the podcast, so I could say anything about her. Again, very supportive. And it is a weird thing. I've got weird thoughts about lockdown and COVID, and like, it's so strange, isn't it, to think that actually that happened? And I find it so fascinating, and I think it's going to be so fascinating in like 10, 20 years' time, because it's bound to have had an effect on everyone to varying degrees. But it was just such a weird thing. I still can't quite get my head around it. I knew that I wasn't going to go back to that wedding venue for various reasons. And then lockdown happened and COVID happened, and then hospitality was dead in the water, and the wedding industry was shot to shit. I mean, can you remember? It was suddenly, no, nothing's happening, and we don't know when it's going to happen again. And people had spent thousands, and venues had spent thousands, and it was already, there was nothing you could do about it. I mean, businesses were going out of business left, right, and centre. What the world was, it was, you know. But I knew I wasn't going to go back, so technically I was unemployed. Just not a thing at our venue or in our area of the UK, or the style of wedding or the vibe of the client or whatever. I don't know, but it just wasn't a thing. Like, I didn't even really know what it was or understand it at all. And so I was like, okay, right, all right, man. It's interesting thoughts, really interesting thoughts. And we talked about it a bit more, and I came off the call and I looked into it, and there was a training academy, the Academy of Modern Celebrancy, shout out. And it was remote learning, one-time fee, you take as long as you want, and you train to become a celebrant. And I looked at it and I thought, right, the reasons that I'm leaving the venue are personal. They're nothing to do with the actual work, because I was devastated when I had to leave that job because I loved it so much. I was like, this idea of being a celebrant combines everything I'm good at, everything I love. So by this point, I've had over 6 years working in weddings. So I knew everything, I think. I knew everything there was to know about weddings. I dealt with all different types of clients, from the first inquiry through to the wedding date, through to the pickup the day after. I had that experience under my belt. I had a degree in performing arts. Public speaking, not a problem. Live for it. Love the attention. I love people. I've always loved people. Always been a people person. Always liked to hear people's stories. Far too intrusive. Hugely inappropriate. And I just thought, writing, I've always written, from sort of being 14 and writing incredibly tragic teenage angst poetry. I once won an award for one called Cocooned into Depression, to like copywriting and things like that, and writing the social media stuff and the website content for the venue. And I've always been a writer. And I thought, oh my God, this literally does combine everything I love and everything I'm good at into one thing. Do I need to train? Probably not. Am I going to? Yes, because it's still lockdown. I still have a newborn. All I'm doing is breastfeeding and watching Escape to the Chateau. So I have time on my hands. So I did it. I started. And within, I'm me. And so within like a minute, I'd set up my Instagram before doing anything else. And I started my training. And I kid you not. So that was the springtime of 2020. I kid you not. 2 months into my training, not even a quarter of the way through the course, I got a message, I got a DM from lovely Josh Tully, who is an incredible events planner. He used to work at Babington House. There's an episode with him. I'll link it. He's so gorgeous. And I've known him for years through various reasons. He's local to Bath. I've known him for years and years. And he got in touch and he said, I hear you're a celebrant now. So I was like, yes, of course I am, Josh. I'm a celebrant. Yes, absolutely. And he said, because of all the restrictions and all the COVID laws and everything's changing and lockdown, blah, 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 I have a couple who are actually friends of mine and they are getting married at the Roman Baths in October and they need a celebrant. Right. Yes, no, absolutely, Josh. I can absolutely help you. Not a problem at all, Josh. Not a problem at all. So I took the booking. I took the bloody booking. I literally knew nothing, not even a quarter of the way through the course, and I booked my first wedding. And I was shit scared. My brother always taught me that you can say anything with conviction and people will believe you. And if you remember back, I told my last boss that being an actress, I can act confident. I can act my way into shit. So I had my planning meeting with the bride and groom a few weeks later, and I just acted like I knew what I was doing. And they bought it. And it was at the Roman Baths in October of 2020. And when you get married at the Roman Baths, I've been there a few times since, you either get married at dusk or dawn or dusk. Daylight up, daylight down, morning or evening, because it's such a big tourist attraction, they can't close it in the day. So you either get married at like 7:30, 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. And they were getting married in the morning. And I remember I got a new folder, I got all dressed up, I went into Bath, early doors. I did the ceremony. I think it was the time when you could have 7 guests, which actually is, I find a smaller ceremony scarier than a bigger ceremony. It's like if I have to sing in front of 5 people, that's terrifying. Singing in front of 500, that's fine. I've never been given that opportunity, but I can imagine that's how I would feel. Can you believe I've been talking about myself for 44 minutes? I'm not even finished. And so I did the wedding. And my God, I remember I met a friend at the time. I met her for breakfast afterwards. And I was just on I actually feel quite emotional thinking about it. What the hell is wrong with me? It was the feeling that I used to get when I was on stage, and I'd not been on stage for a few years because I'd left uni a few years prior. And if you are a creative, which is a term I hate, but if you are a creative person, if you are an artist or a singer or a poet or a performer of any kind, I do believe, this is another personal info bit about me, I do believe that as a creative person, you are built differently. And you have something in you that it needs to get out, right? And I have that. I've always had that. And so when I'm on stage, just like that is where I'm happiest, is on stage. And I had not been on stage for a while and I missed it. I didn't realize how much I missed it. But being on stage, being in front of even just 7 people and performing, I was so scared because even as I stood there on their wedding day, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I'd written the ceremony, they'd read it, they'd loved it, they just assumed I was a professional. Standing there with the pressure of someone's wedding day, the joy and the excitement and the pure, simple, unadulterated joy. Again, joy. It was just, oh God. And it was a performance. It is a performance. And they were lovely and their family were lovely. And it was absolutely, I feel emotional again. Oh my God. It was absolutely wonderful. It was a feeling I will never ever forget, that first wedding ceremony. Unbelievable. So obviously then I was like, well, now I'm fucked, aren't I? This is it now. This is it for life. I can't do anything else. Literally felt like I was born to do it. So I carried on studying. I carried on actually learning about the profession that I was going to go into. And I finished the course. And I suppose, technically speaking, even though that was my first ever ceremony, I don't actually count it as my first one because I wasn't fully qualified. But in my heart, it's my first one. But on paper, the business sort of started January 2021. And obviously wedding is seasonal, so it started that spring, summer. And I remember then my first two ceremonies, they were back to back. The first one was in London, lovely couple. Stayed with my brother and sister-in-law. I was so nervous. I was so sweaty in getting there. So that's 4 years ago. Not even that long ago, is it, really, when you think about it? Mad. And then the second one, the next day, was for some family friends. And I can't, that is mad, actually. Do you know what? I'm completely thinking aloud now. It's only been 4 years. Do you know what? People should reflect on their achievements more often. It feels great. And it just went off. It just absolutely shot off. And I said to myself, if I can get 30 bookings in the first year, then financially speaking, I will be earning, and I was earning a lot less than I am now. I'll be earning enough to like live and to survive and stay afloat. I'd never been self-employed before. I'd never started a business, because it is starting a business. I'd never done that before. Luckily, my husband's been self-employed for over 10 years, so he helped out. He didn't, but support. And so I thought to myself, if I can get 30 bookings, and the first year, 2021, I got 42. And I think that was a mixture of things. I think looking back, I then and still now, and I get told this a lot at ceremonies, because I so love what I do in my core, you can tell that. You can tell it. When I'm stood there delivering a ceremony, people say to me all the time, afterwards they're like, oh, that was really good. And I say, God, I love it. And they're like, I could tell. Like, you just exude joy and confidence and excitement and adrenaline. And it's contagious, isn't it? It's infectious. If someone smiles, you smile. If they laugh, you laugh. And that's what I had then, and that's what I have now. And I think also, so it's a mix of that sort of natural confidence and joy that I have for celebrancy. It was also the fact that I'd been in the wedding industry locally for years, and so I had a lot of contacts, and they really helped me out, and they really recommended me. They didn't know, they'd not seen me do a ceremony, but they just knew me as a person, and they were like, oh my God, this is perfect for you. This is great. I know you're going to be good, so of course I'll recommend you. And I'll always be grateful to people like Kirsten, the wedding helper, and people who I'd known from the venue who recommended me without even seeing my work. They just knew, which is just amazing. And also, of course, it was still lockdown. And so all the rules were changing. And I think lockdown changed weddings hugely. But I think one thing it definitely changed were technically speaking, were the ceremonies. Because logistically, right, people had booked their big white wedding and they couldn't have it. So a lot of people, and I did a lot of these second weddings, if you like, in 2021. 2021 was, and 22 were the busiest years for weddings, like ever. And everyone was catching up. Even into 2023, people were still catching up. People, think about it, we had a whole year pretty much, if not longer, with all these weddings that were cancelled. And a lot of the couples, what they did is that they would be like, oh, do you know what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Okay, we'll legally get married, or we'll do what my first couple did, and we'll have a wedding with 7 people in the registry office. But then as lockdown lifted, they were like, well, I still want the party. I still want the big white wedding. COVID took that from me, and I still want that. But they wanted the ceremony, but they were already legally married. So what do I do? How do I do this? Google it, celebrant. Because of course, and I will do another episode about what actually being a celebrant is, although go back because there's plenty of them. Because of course, a celebrant ceremony is not legal. So they'd already done that. So they couldn't get a registrar. So they had to have a celebrant. So I honestly think without COVID and lockdown, I mean, God, life for everyone would be different, wouldn't it? But without COVID and lockdown, what I do now would not be anywhere near as well known as a profession, and me as a professional, as a person. It wouldn't be anywhere near as well known as it is today, because people didn't have a choice. They had to find an alternative, and I, Olivia Coleman, was that alternative. Literally 52 minutes I've been talking about myself. I'm getting there. I'll close it up before an hour, I promise. Poor producer Drew's got to listen to all this shit. And so, and it just flew. And every year since, I've exceeded my targets. And I'm just obsessed with it. I'm still obsessed with it. the beauty of being a celebrant, logistically speaking, right? I've got 2 kids now. I work from home. The weddings are mostly on the weekends when my husband or parents or in-laws, whatever, can look after the kids. So logistically speaking, it's great for a mum. I'm used to working on the weekends because I've always worked in retail, then I worked in events at the venue. But not just that, it is, like I say, every single thing I love and every single thing I'm good at. And it is just the most joyful job. I get to meet all different types of people from all different walks of life. And that's something I love. That's something we didn't get to do at the venue, because obviously when you work at one venue, as beautiful as it may be, you're stuck to that one place. And venues, in my experience, now that I've been to a lot, they do tend to attract a certain type of client. Understandably, given the style of the venue and the budget, right? So it kind of, after 6 years of working there, it did get a little samey. I still had the same zest for it, and I still treated every wedding like it was the first in the world. But the couples were the same, and we were going to have a sweet cart, how novel. Bunting, great. And it did get a bit samey, but now I get to meet all different types of people. I mean, in the last 4 years, 2026, 4 years, I've done over 150 weddings. I have married people in pubs, in village halls. I've been to a chateau in Brussels. I've been to a private villa in Greece. I've been to castles. I've been to beaches. I've been to woodlands. I've been to barn venues. I've been to luxe venues. I've been inside. I've been outside. I've been up. I've been down. I've been to all these incredible, incredible places, and some less incredible, for all these wonderful people who have no money, have loads of money, who have a bit of money, who don't want to spend it, do want to spend it. But what's really wonderful is when people book me and when people book a celebrant, they're doing it with such purpose and intention, because it is an investment, as everything in a wedding is. And so if they didn't care about the ceremony, if you didn't care about your ceremony, you would just book a registrar, no offence, Karen, or a vicar, because that's what people do. That is the obvious choice. That is the traditional choice. You didn't care. But by the time people have looked for a celebrant and they've looked for me and they found me and they've made an inquiry and they make that call, A, they feel like they know me because they either listen to my podcast where I talk absolute nonsense, as we've learned, or they go on my social media where I talk absolute nonsense, as you'll learn. And they're doing it with intent. They want something different. They want something unique. They give a shit about their wedding ceremony, which is what it's all about. Talia, fucking brilliant. Fucking love my job, Karen. Lola started doing that voice now. I said to her last night, eat your beans. She went, I don't want to, Mum. Wonderful. And that's me in a nutshell. Who knew that I could talk about myself for under an hour? I really do feel for you, producer Joe. I'm so sorry. But I feel like if you're new here, was that helpful? I don't know. Come back to me. So the podcast has been going for 3 years, 2 or 3 years. It's a little ad hoc, because me and producer Drew, life happens. We've both got 2 kids. We've both got babies, and we've both got full-time jobs outside of the podcast. So I'd like to tell you it comes out every Tuesday at 9 a.m. It doesn't. That's not realistic. Okay, it's ad hoc. But my fans, my listeners are very, very loyal, and they don't care when it comes as long as it comes. That's what she said. It is fun, it is silly, it's very rarely about weddings. No, it is about weddings. I offer advice, I interview industry experts. We have got some incredible people lined up for this year, but also look back at old episodes, because I've already interviewed some incredible people. So interesting. I interviewed Ruth Ann. She's an actual celebrity, She wrote The Vow, in case you didn't know. And it's just a bit of fun. I don't know whether 2 people are listening or 200,000. I doubt it, because I don't ask producer Drew. I don't want to know, because then I wouldn't sit here in my living room with my coffee talking shit, because I would worry about what I'm saying and how I'm saying it and how many listeners are tuning in, which maybe I should, but I'm not going to. I very rarely wear makeup. I've only just started wearing a bra for filming, not in life. Sometimes I wear a bra in life. It's nonsense. It's wonderful. I hope it's helpful. I give you tips. We do talk about weddings. There's the Instagram, I'll Marry You podcast, my own work Instagram, not that Olivia Coleman. Pretty famous by now. I'm basically a micro-influencer. I influence myself once a month at least. It's fun, and I hope it's helpful. And I hope you enjoy it. And I want to hear from you. So if you have any topics you want me to cover, slide into the DMs, ping me an email, thepodcast@oliviacolemancelebrant.co.uk. I'm trying to get all the info in, Drew, before the timer hits an hour. can you believe I've got a new mic look? So I'm feeling fancy this year. I'm going to do an episode about what it is I do. Again, I repeat my episodes quite a lot, but I think that's okay. Because again, I don't really think about what I'm doing. I should. Yeah, that's it. That's me. A whole hour of me talking about myself. So twat. I hope that helps. Welcome. And congratulations on getting engaged. Tell me everything. Thank you so much for listening. It really does mean the world. If you find this podcast even remotely helpful or moderately entertaining, share with all your friends and family. You can DM me any questions, queries, if you want to share any stories on the podcast Instagram at I'll Marry You Podcast. Get in touch. I want to hear all your tall tales. See you soon.
I'll Marry You is a podcast by Olivia Coleman. The music is Mr. Sunnyface by Wayne Jones, and the show is produced and edited by Drew Toynbee.